Welcome to the Red State Weekly Briefing. I'm your host, Aaron Gardner. With us right now this week, we have Thomas LeDuc and Joe Cunningham. A little bit later on in the show, we hope to have Caleb Howe showing up and gracing us with his blessed appearance. This week on the show, we're going to be talking about the 2014 horse race, some of the polls that came out this week, some of the action that's been going on in different swing states that we need to lock up for the Republicans to get a majority. We're also going to be talking, if Caleb does come on, hopefully he does, we're going to be focusing on some stories that he's done a lot of legwork on in Oklahoma City, the beheading that happened after a Islamic man was fired from his job and decided to go off and go ahead and behead some 54-year-old lady. We're also going to talk a little bit about the People's Climate March. I don't know if you saw anything about this on the Twitters or in your news, but it was a pretty big march, and we're going to discuss it and some of global warming's latest and greatest myths being busted. So let's go ahead and start this out. We're going to go right to the 2014 Senate race, and I just want to preface this with God's been gracing Republicans lately in the Senate race runs. We've seen a group, a bushel of polls that have come out across the nation for different Republican Senate candidates showing them in a strong position or leading their Democratic incumbent opponents. So, Joe, let me go ahead and go to you. What's going on? And I believe specifically we're going to talk about the Hagen poll. Is that correct?
Yeah, CNN Opinion Research released a couple of polls this morning, but a lot of people were talking about the first. I'll start in my state, and then we'll work our way to Hagen, because that one is also a kind of fascinating one. In Louisiana, they ran two polls. One was for the open primary, which is in November, which is the November 4th race that everybody is kind of looking at. The thing about Louisiana is that we have what we refer to as kind of a jungle primary system, in that everybody's on the ballot the first time, and then the top two, if nobody makes it over 50%, go on to a December runoff 30 days later. And if you look at the open primary and you look at the top three candidates, which is Bill Cassidy, Mary Landrieu, and Rob Maness, Landrieu's got 43%, Cassidy has 40%, and Maness has 9%, which means nobody's got over 50%, which means it goes to a runoff. In the runoff scenario, that +3 that Landrieu has flips to a +3 for Cassidy. So it doesn't, although Maness is the only other candidate who's really kind of making a push and making a showing. And in fact, I think this weekend Sarah Palin was in Louisiana stumping for him. The bulk of the vote goes to Landrieu and Cassidy, the two main politicians running in this one. If they go right now, and this CNN Opinion Research poll is not the only poll that showed this, in a runoff situation between Cassidy and Landrieu, most of the polls are showing that right now Cassidy is up at least 3 points. So, RedState has endorsed Maness. Eric will post this week.
Let me break in on there, Joe, before you go into what I was just going to ask you. But with Maness, some people are going to say, he's playing spoiler, blah, 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 runoffs, this, that, and the other thing. Now, on the issues, Maness is the candidate that RedState has chosen. Eric still backs Maness, still says that people should go ahead and vote for Maness. But what's your idea? You're on the ground there. How do you think it's possible at this late stage for Maness to break in to this three-way race between himself and Landrieu and everybody else?
I'm supporting him. I'm going to vote for him in November. I'm not sure if he can pick up 30-35% to try to really mess up Cassidy's or Landrieu's chances of getting to that top 2 spot. It depends on what magic Sarah Palin can run. That is certainly going to be that can play a factor. Right now, statewide, from state Republican leaders, he's getting virtually no support. And what you're seeing on the ground is a lot of television ads, going back and forth between Landrieu and Cassidy. You don't see Maness really getting a whole lot. In terms of outside conservative groups like RedState, like Sarah Palin, like Madison Project and others, they're all lending their support. But as much as I like him, I'm not sure if he's going to be able to get that support, which is sad because he's a great candidate. I've talked to him multiple times, and he's really on the ball with knowing exactly what the people he's absolutely right in that both Bill Cassidy and Mary Landrieu are out of touch. And if you see any of the Bill Cassidy ads where he's doing the narrating and the talking, he looks like a charismatic void. He's not showing a whole lot of emotion. And Mary Landrieu, you take whatever she says with a grain of salt.
Well, absolutely. And I just want to also I want to note to all of our viewers that you can also, if you're watching at the Google Chat event site, you can check out these polls that Joe is mentioning in the showcase sidebar. We have them linked there, as well as FTR Radio and RedState.com as well. So I just want to make it and let people know that as well.
And Caleb Howe has joined us.
And Caleb Howe has joined us, breaking news. He has arrived just in time to express his disinterest in the horse race politics. Caleb, how are you doing this evening?
I'm fine. How are y'all?
Doing pretty good, doing pretty good. We were just discussing the Louisiana race and Maness and Landrieu and the other candidate who I can't remember. Joe, moving on from Louisiana, the other races that we saw, what else did we see this week that you think we should highlight in the polls?
Well, along with the two Louisiana polls, the CNN Opinion Research released a North Carolina poll, which has Kay Hagan up +3 over Tom Tillis. Interesting note about that is this comes off the heels of a story that Kay Hagan's husband took over $100,000 of stimulus money, the same stimulus that Kay Hagan voted for in the Senate. So, and it was Politico who called her out on it. But in the interest of full disclosure, a company that Tom Tillis has invested about $50,000 in also got money, but there is a huge difference, and you can see it in the way that Politico wrote the story. There's a huge difference between investing in a company and your husband owning a company that takes stimulus money, and that's the big thing.
Right, and the thing about this is with Hagan, it's once again it's influence and power over principle or anything like that. So that is the difference. The way that they use their influence and their power to benefit certain people and themselves is really the issue in this case, I'd say.
And the last poll I wanted to point out, only because there's a debate currently ongoing, or maybe just wrapping up, in Iowa between Joni Ernst and Bruce Braley. And this latest poll, coming from the Des Moines Register, has Ernst up +6, which I think is one of the biggest leads I've seen in that particular race, because it was very close there for a while. And the Des Moines Register now has Joni Ernst up +6, which is pretty big for the Republicans. And I think if you go to RedState, you'll see a post from late yesterday or early today from Mo Lane kind of breaking down the races where they stand now and showing that the Republicans, if these trends keep going, the Republicans stand a pretty good chance right now.
About how many seats, Joe?
I think when Mo counted it, 52, 53 at the very least, and it depends on how some of these other races go as well.
And the thing about it is we won't really know until the end of September for real, and throughout this next week of polling, next 2 weeks of polling really, how far this wave is going to go as far as where is it's going to crest. Right now we know that Colorado's looking good as far as the Senate race and possibly good on the governor's race as well. They're both tight races. They're going to come down to turnout efforts, and it's a all-male ballot election, so it's something different here. But it's something that we'll see over the next week and a half where this is really going to go to and how far it could go. You know, you look at Real Clear Politics and some of the opinions that have been put out on there, and they're saying that, you know, they wouldn't be surprised if it was a 12-seat pickup, which, you know, to me that's pretty bold. They're saying it's not a for sure thing, but you know, it is interesting how everything's going to play out in the next couple weeks. I think we're going to definitely win the Senate at this point. I do want to point out we have a question. The first time we've ever used this Q&A session on the Hangouts here. Somebody has a question about the war. They want to know, what do you think of it? I'm going to tell Amar Hussam that we're not going to worry about his question, and we're just going to go ahead and delete that question and wait for a real question. But if anybody does have a question, you can do that from the events page here on the Google Plus Hangout thingamabobber, and feel free to do so throughout the show. Now, Joe, any other polls that you or Thomas, did you have something to say there?
Well, you know, if I can just stir the pot a little bit, you know, going back to Louisiana, how much influence does Sarah Palin still have?
In Louisiana, not a whole lot, and I'm not sure that her stumping's actually going to make that big of a difference. Her star power has been kind of waning nationwide, but here in Louisiana, there are some individual. The Tea Party in Louisiana is not as organized and not as, you know, not as powerful as one might think. Louisiana is very much an old, set in its way party structure kind of state. So you're not necessarily going to see an outsider like Sarah Palin making a whole lot of difference. You might see a little bit of a shift. And, you know, like I said, I'm supporting Manus. I'm not seeing him go through, and I'm seeing a lot of frustration with the fact that this is going to be pushed to a runoff where typically incumbents have an advantage. Now, right now the polls say that advantage for the incumbent isn't there, but again, you know, we have only a certain amount of time till November, and then another 30 days where there's already several $1 million that have been bought in airtime between November 4th and December 5th.
Right, they've already purchased the time.
Yes, they're already purchasing the time now. People have been preparing for this to be a runoff for a while, and they're purchasing the airtime now. Yeah,
it's good to know. I mean, that's some pre-planning there.
It's going to make television unwatchable for me for a month. Which is what's pissing me off.
In the last big race. Right, what was that, Caleb?
That's the Tillerson-Hagen race right now. There's an ad every 11 seconds, I think I timed.
Right. It's pretty much the same way here in Colorado. There's an awful lot of ads already here in Colorado as well. I do want to go back to one other thing. We're going to talk about an Iowa poll, right, Joe?
Wait, can I ask you a question, Aaron? How do people use the questions?
The way that they use the questions is they go to the event page where this is actually taking place. You know, you can either get to it from the YouTube page or you can get to it anyhow. It's the Google Plus page for it, where the Google Hangout actually is. They can go to that page and they can type in and ask questions, and they can also
how do they get to that? How do they get to the Google Plus page?
Oh, the event page, well, you can check out my Twitter feed at Aaron_RS. I tweeted it out earlier under the #RSWB hashtag, and then also let me tell you the address you could go to. You go to https, well, just plus.google.com, and then it's a whole lot of stuff. But if you go to the RedState Google Plus page.
Oh no, you got the loop back.
Yeah, we can hear it.
Oh no, Aaron, run for your life! You got the loop back, son.
It's okay. The loop back happened because I accidentally unpaused it. But
that's fine. They just need to go to your Twitter then, and then the rest of us can also retweet it.
Yes. Go to my Twitter, and the link is there, and you can get to that. But while I'm tweeting it out again so you guys can all take a look at it, I want Joe to talk about this Iowa poll between Bruce Braley and Joni Ernst and what it's showing between the two in that race.
This poll is showing Joni Ernst at 44, Bruce Braley at 38. That's a +6. That's I think similar, if not the exact same numbers as the Quinnipiac poll that I think we looked at last a week or two back. And those are the only two polls that now makes two polls that show her at +6. We had, let's see, Quinnipiac took a survey from September 10th to September 15th that had Joni Ernst up +6 in a 50-44 race. Fox News released a poll that was a tie between the two. Rasmussen did the same thing. Now the Des Moines Register has a +6 advantage for Ernst as well. Looking at the numbers surveyed, though, Quinnipiac surveyed 1,167 likely voters. The Des Moines Register only polled 546 likely voters. Fox News hit 600, Rasmussen hit 750. Margin of error in most of the polls in this race has been about 4% either way, with the exception of Quinnipiac, which was a 2.9 margin of error. But those margins of error still, for the Des Moines one and for the Quinnipiac one, both, Ernst is still in the lead outside of that margin of error. So take from that what you will. And like I said, there was a debate tonight, and I've seen a lot of commentary on it on Twitter. So.
And that would be a pickup for the Republicans, being that's Harkin's seat, right? Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. It's one of the ones that we'll need to get to a majority in the Senate for sure. So right now, just so you know, my computer's actually kind of frozen and I can't get to the screen I need to get to. But I want to go ahead and start shifting away from the horse race here in a minute. Any other highlights that we should be watching out for over the coming week here, Joe, that is on your radar?
I would say when it comes to the president's approval and disapproval rating, almost ignore anything by Rasmussen right now because they're consistently showing that disapproval for Obama is at a +4 advantage and everybody else is like +8 and up. Like they're very much an outlier in terms of these disapproval polls. As far as actual races, let's see if there's just real quick. Let's see. Rasmussen did do. Let's see. Arkansas Senate has Cotton up +7 over Pryor. So that's kind of a shocker in terms of how close that election has seemed. And suddenly there's a +7 gap there. There's one that might need to be looked at again. And again, Rasmussen has been kind of all over the place, and such a big margin like that kind of has me wary at first.
Yeah, Rasmussen has actually, lost a lot of his credibility in my book ever since Scott Rasmussen left. Their models have changed dramatically since then, so it is something that we do need to watch. Now, you mentioned the president's approval rating. One other thing that I think bears mentioning is this last week there was a poll in the New York Times, and it actually talked about the one of the sub questions was about the male-female gap, and they basically said that the gap has basically vanished. A 12-point gap, I think it was 12 points in 2012, has gone down to like 3 or 4 point gap advantage. That's going to have a tremendous impact in places like Colorado and probably places like Iowa as well, in Arkansas. Also, one other thing that I saw in the PPP polling this week out of Colorado was that Hispanics are generally still have an approval of Obama, but when they or an approval of their incumbent candidate, such as Mark Udall here in Colorado, but when asked the question, would you support somebody who voted 99% of the time with Barack Obama, they disapproved of that, basically like a 65 to 35 margin. So I definitely think that if certain groups out there are want to move the needle on Hispanics, they can do that. And then one other thing with the female-male gender gap, the national security issue is now popping up a lot more, and that is going to be something that is going to move women more towards the GOP's favor. So I think those are a couple things that we should watch out for in the next round of pollings and see if those trends are holding up and can be substantiated. But now I want to go to Caleb. For some reason, my computer I still can't control any of the screens on my computer, but I want to go to Caleb and have him discuss.
I think it's just mad at you for saying "computer" all the time.
It's true.
Computer.
I'd be mad at you too.
Right. So I want to bring Caleb in and have him talk about a story that he's done a lot of legwork on. I mean, he's basically been the primary guy reporting this story in the media, and I want to give him the credit that he's due here on that, and let him go ahead and discuss the beheading that occurred in Oklahoma this past week. So Caleb, I can't switch to your screen right this second, but go ahead and start discussing this, please.
Okay, well, I think everybody at this point probably knows what happened, that Alton Nolan, who has a new name that he goes by, Jakeem Yisrael, went to the Vaughn Foods distribution center, left from the human resources area where he was fired, went around to the front of the building, killed via beheading one employee, and was attacking another employee, stabbing her multiple times before he was interrupted and stopped by an armed member of the company, the COO, who shot him without killing him but stopped the attack. After the attack happened, the news broke that he was a recent convert to Islam and that he had a lot of anti-American messages on his page. Now, some of the things that I found out and that we put up at Truth Revolt, for one thing, we have access to the local newspaper. They don't have an online edition, but I was able to get copies of the afternoon edition of the newspaper on Friday, the Idabel newspaper. Now, Idabel is the city where Nolan is from, where he went to high school, where he grew up. That's not where the attack occurred. The attack was actually in Moore, Oklahoma. And according to the local newspaper and local sources, I have individual sources who have confirmed the newspaper's account, he was fired because of an argument that he had on the premises while he was employed there, suggesting to other female employees that the proper punishment for a woman who commits adultery is for her to be stoned to death. And he was in an argument with them, trying to get them to agree. Apparently that argument got out of hand. He was let go. And then you know what happened. So we got that from the, let me get the name of the newspaper here. It's the Gazette. It's just how I've been referring to. I think it's just it's the McCurtain Gazette. McCurtain is the name of the county Idabel is in. That's also the name of the county jail, which is located in Idabel near Broken Bow, a nearby city. And the reason I mention that is because one of my sources was a prison guard there at the county jail. He also grew up with Alton Nolan, the accused beheader. Grew up in the same neighborhood. They were friends together. And what we found out was that in their circle of friends, Nolan is not the only person who has committed or been accused of committing a murder. Two of their friends from the same group of friends who grew up in the same neighborhood on the same street and hung out together, two other people also committed murder. One of them stabbed a woman to death in a bathtub with an accomplice, and the other, point blank in the back of the head, shot his boss from a local chain restaurant, shot her in the back, a fast food place, shot her in the back of the head, and stole her deposits for the day. Both of them have been convicted, and the guy who committed the first-degree murder, who shot the woman in the back of the head, was sentenced to life without parole. The other pled guilty to being an accomplice to the crime.
Now, Caleb, let me ask you real
Yes.
quick, going back to the first perp here. Now, he converted to Islam in prison. Is that correct?
In 2011, he was in prison. He was in there for a number of charges, but one of the most significant charges that he was in for was assault and battery of a police officer. That's what he went to jail for, and that's where he converted to Islam.
Was this assault and battery of a police officer? Was this like he was beating up the cop when he was trying to get away or something, and this spawned from a smaller incident, or what was his whole genesis into this?
She actually was interviewed on Megyn Kelly. It was a struggle for the gun during an attempt to arrest. I believe it was a drug charge, and he very brutally assaulted the police officer. And she said the other night when she found out what happened, what she told Megyn Kelly was, at first she was amazingly relieved, thinking, "Oh my gosh, that guy could have murdered me. He could have tried to kill me." But then the second thing she felt was regret that she had the chance to kill him then and didn't, and that now this happened. And I hope that somewhere that she understands that she did her job the way she was supposed to, according to the laws that govern our country, and she did exactly what she was responsible to do, and she's in no way responsible for what this guy has done now. So I hope that she knows that.
Right, I hope so as well. I mean, honestly, the fact that she was involved earlier, she's still a hero, and I certainly understand the feelings she has.
Well, it goes to show you something about the man, too. Now, I do have some breaking news. I was trying to hold this until my website. If you can just give me a second and make sure this. Yes. If you go to truthrevolt.com, or I'm sorry, truthrevolt.org, I don't even know where I write. I've got a breaking story up right now. Alton Nolan's mother and sister, just in the last hour or so, have released on Facebook a video talking about Nolan and the beheading. I have it was not embeddable on YouTube. I have made it embeddable so you can get the YouTube at Truth Revolt or from youtube.com/DigitasDaily. And I want to just bring up two things that they said in there that I think are important to talk about. One of the things his mother said was that she knows what they're saying that he's done. But I tell you this, that's not my son. Then she says there's two sides to every story, and only one side is being heard, and that she's praying that justice will prevail. The whole story will come out. The whole story. So she's emphasizing the fact that there's according to her, more to this.
Well, I mean, like, what more could there be to this that she's, trying to say that there is? Is it more than he was an upset person who follows Islam, and this is the appropriate way to venture rage?
She touched the religious subject very obliquely, but she said, my son was raised to love God. So I'm not sure what she was getting at there, but she definitely raised the specter of religion. I think that perhaps she means to dispute the claim that we made at Truth Revolt, and this story has gotten quite a bit of legs as well, when we interviewed the childhood friend who said that he was already a violent, mean, angry, resentful person who didn't like women, and that Islam just appealed to him. I think what his mother is probably setting the groundwork for by saying he was raised to love God, and the sister specifically says he was a people person in the past tense. I think what they're planning to say is he was fine and normal, and then he converted, and now look at him. So I think that's what the mother and the sister are probably laying the groundwork for. They're going to say that it was the conversion to Islam corrupted him, not that he was already corrupt and sought out Islam. But I do have a childhood friend of his who says the opposite. He says he was already that way, and that's why Islam appealed to him.
Right, yeah. Well, it's kind of a chicken and egg type of discussion.
It is a chicken and egg, that's right.
And it's a difficult thing because the reality is people need to understand what Islam is, what it encourages people to do, and they need to connect their own dots and realize that when you have things like ISIS in the Middle East and you have the leaders of it actively encouraging Muslims in the West to act out in violence in any way, shape, or form possible, is not surprising that something as simple as a firing becomes a beheading and an act of Islamic violence and terrorism, really.
Right, and that's what his childhood friend, let me get you his name. I've got to pull up my notes here. I actually have about 10 different local sources that are just my sources, that I got myself, who are from the area, who grew up with him, some of the people on his high school football team, and people that knew him after that as an adult in the workplace. And one of those... I'm sorry?
I was going to say I wanted to follow up after you got done with that on something that's been confusing me a little bit about this.
Sure. Kenneth Tucker. Kenneth Tucker is he was an Army reservist who was called up. He went to Egypt, and he also did a tour in Iraq. When he returned, he was a corrections officer. He was a police officer, and then he moved into, basically for more money, into working in oil in Oklahoma. He was friends with Nolan as children. He's the one who gave us a lot of the background info, and we're currently the only site that has the story about their two friends who also committed murder, the same two, Eric Blandon and Corey Lewis, who are from the same circle of friends and who have also committed murder as adults. What was your question?
Okay, it's related to this. There's a debate that has broken out immediately after this happened, following up what happened in Texas with the Air Force fellow that went shooting, about the use of the word, is this workplace violence or is this terrorism? And I was following some of the lefty stream on this, and there really is such a huge push to say that this isn't terrorism, it's workplace violence. Can it be both? I mean, if whatever the motivation is, I mean, you have different degrees.
I said that on Twitter. I said that it's obviously fact. I think I've done something.
I don't follow you on Twitter, and I guess I should.
I would like that. Yeah. I mean, you don't have to. Twitch doesn't.
No. Oh. Wow. Okay. But I mean, honestly, why can't it be both? And I mean, why?
I said that on Twitter. I said obviously that is correct to call it workplace violence. It's violence, and it took place at a workplace. I mean, that's pretty much the very definition. He was an employee. This took place immediately after being fired. That doesn't exclude the possibility that the nature of Islam, one, informed the method of the crime that he committed, and two, was the precipitating factor in both his being fired and his rejection of that firing. Because if he was trying to convert people and trying to convince people that women should be stoned, and that resulted in an argument, and that argument resulted in his being fired, and that firing made him angry at the rejection of Islam, and then he reacted out in retaliation for their rejection of Islam. That's how Islamic extremism works. That's the whole point. They reject other people rejecting them very violently. They reject people who don't convert by killing them. So this is just standard operating procedure.
In any type of crime in America, there are different degrees and severity of punishment that are based on first degree, second degree, whatever it is. If you go and murder somebody, and beheading is a murdering, last time I checked, and it is based on your belief that you don't believe what I believe in terms of teaching of religious matters, that probably is a form of religious terrorism. I don't know. Maybe I'm being a little bit idealistic here. And you know what? I just followed Caleb Powell on Twitter, and I suggest all of you find people that too.
I think I messed something up with the stream here, Aaron.
It's the end.
You're fine. We're doing just fine. But Caleb, if you could do me a favor and you could go ahead and share in the chat the couple links that you have for your Truth Revolt pieces on this Oklahoma beheading, I would appreciate that. We'll get that up on the page as well for everybody to see. Now, since we're talking about this Oklahoma and we've broached the subject a little bit on ISIS, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about ISIS before we jump into our last major segment here today. With ISIS, what we've seen is in this last week, we've seen the airstrikes begin to happen over this last week with Obama and their campaign. We've seen people popping up again who we thought we were gone. We've seen this Khorasan group, which we're supposed to be super afraid of, which all of a sudden popped up. And, the reality is most all of this is still Al-Qaeda. It always was Al-Qaeda. It's going to be Al-Qaeda until it's done, and that's just the way it is. We just need to accept, and there was a really good post today in the Weekly Standard. We need to accept what Burke was talking about way back in the day about this being a long war, and I'm talking way back, even when he was going against the French, is when he was talking about this, when he was going against the French Revolution, and he said that it's a long war that you have to engage in order to get rid of this sort of terrorism. And a lot of people don't remember the French Revolution was the reign of terror. They used terror in order to get to their goals, to achieve their goals. Just as it was then, it is now. Bush said it, this is a long war. It's a generational war, and we need to recognize that and understand that while we engage in this. I personally think that you got Obama out there doing an air campaign, and you got the Secretary of State, Kerry, out there basically claiming mission accomplished in a way that George Bush never would have. Caleb, what do you think? I mean, you're a veteran. You've been through this. We went through all this stuff with the Iraq War and the commentary on that. What do you think about this now and what we're doing? It seems ridiculous.
Isn't that the question that the person asked in chat earlier that you...
I did, but we weren't talking about it then. We were talking about horse race stuff then, but now that we're talking about it, I'll go ahead and ask it.
Okay. So just screw that guy for existing.
Well, he had a goofy name to me, so I was like, forget it. Let's make a joke of it. But, you know, that's the type of guy I am sometimes.
Yes, you are.
You are too, though.
Why don't you talk to me? Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, the way that he had to be dragged, he had to be dragged into this, and the State Department and the Department of Defense, the Pentagon spokespeople and the administration all around dancing around this. Is it war? Is it not war? We don't want to call it war. Well, it's sort of war, but it's not a Bush war. Well, we spell it war, but it's all lowercase, so it's hip. You know what I'm saying? We use a 2 instead of an A or a @ symbol. So
I said on Twitter, it's not a legitimate war. To go back to 2012 Aiken comments.
Right. Well, I mean, it's funny that the members of Congress say it's that he's when they're on television interviews, I should specify, that this is outrageous that the president hasn't come to them. When they're on the House and Senate floor, or when they're talking to the president, everything's hunky-dory. And I think the reason for that is they don't want to have to vote on it. They just want to be able to say that they should have been able to vote on it.
Oh, I think that's definitely true. And you know what's interesting, the authorization. I was watching this on Fox News today. The very authorization that they're basing their attacks on ISIS on right now is I think it was the 2002 or 2001 authorization that they want to repeal, that they've said like 3 months ago that they wanted to repeal. So your point about them, what was that, Joe?
They still do. There's a new report that came out today that said they still do want to repeal that.
Yeah, they want to repeal the very authorization that they're using to justify the war on ISIS, basically.
Well, they're using the 2001 Afghanistan one too, because the head of ISIS evidently was affiliated with Osama bin Laden in some way, and that was out of the 2001. So, because I think you were watching Fox Sunday. And they had President Obama's national security advisor on there. They really did have an interesting debate about that, and about that they're not going to take a vote before the election, but should they vote after the election when it's lame duck? And I was kind of torn about that. Should it be the new Congress that votes on this? It'll still be within the 90-day window that the president has under the War Powers Act, or should they do? The people who are elected, they're still elected officials. Should they vote in lame duck on it, even though you could possibly have, a number of these people, being defeated in the election?
I think you're probably going to see a lame duck vote, and you're going to see one that extends the authorization for a full year, and then it'll basically neutralize the fresh blood we have in the Senate and the House against Obama. I mean, if I was a Democrat strategist, that's what I would do.
I hate to say it because people's lives are on the line with this, but I found it, kind of interesting and fascinating from a purely political point. And I don't know what I think of it. I haven't really been able to kind of hash that out.
Well, we're all supposed to say that politics ends at the
right.
The water's edge and whatever, and foreign policy we're all supposed to come together on that. But I lived through the Bush years. I was overseas for a lot of that, and I was overseas while we had left-wing wackos saying screw them as far as contractors over there trying to do a job who had been hung by Islamic radicals.
Marcos Molatesitasis, that's who that was.
Marcos Molatesitasis. Well, so the politics is just a reality. That's the way the left does this. They play politics with war, with foreign policy, and that's just what they do, and that's what they've always.
But even if they do it, the question is that what we do? Well, they did it first. But I think that what you have to answer is that we're not playing politics, and politics is ending at the shore, because what politics ending at the shore means is that you don't advocate for or against a foreign policy based on how it's going to affect your political future. You instead do so based on what's best for the country and what's best for the military who is acting. So the question is, what do you do when your president is doing something that isn't best for the country? You don't just shut up and say politics end at the shore, because that's politics extending beyond the shore. You're being politically expedient by not criticizing the president. If he's doing the wrong thing, then the way to not be political, the way to instead be legitimate and realistic and caring about the United States is to say what ought to be done. So criticizing him when he's wrong is leaving politics at the shore.
Then you know what? There should be a vote tomorrow.
But
there are those who there's been some Republicans who have encouraged Congress to be called back in order to do an authorization that's proper and right. And honestly, I think it is probably the right thing to do. If Obama has time to golf on the weekend, he certainly has time to call back Congress to vote on the authorization to use military force. Especially when he was such an anti-war proponent, and that's what propelled him in 2008 to the general election win, primary and general election win, was his distance from Bush on foreign policy, and that's something he was able to do that Clinton wasn't necessarily able to do at the time.
Caleb House single-handedly right there changed my mind. They absolutely should. They should vote on this ASAP.
This how I do.
Yeah, I mean, they should vote on this ASAP. And both of the senators, the independent from Maine, I forget his name now, and I forget who the other gentleman was. Boy, I was really paying attention.
Those guys.
Yeah, they both were like, we have to have a vote on this. We've ceded too much power to the president on this over the years, and I absolutely agree with that. And they should vote on this next week.
You know who agrees with you 100%?
Who?
Tommy Christopher of the Daily Banter.
Well,
oh my gosh,
he said that in an article the other day I unfortunately read.
Oh, maybe your influence is just rubbing off on him, and he or broken clock theory. I don't know. But Tommy Christopher, he's. I don't want him cited as a source on this show very often.
No, but he did say in a post the other day that the senator should be required to vote. Of course, he thinks it for a totally different reason than we do.
Right, absolutely. That's very true. So ISIS, and let me segue here. There's been certain people like Kerry who have insinuated that maybe part of the problem and rise of ISIS is global warming. And I want to use that as a segue into our last segment here, because this last week we had the People's Climate March, and it was a big event. Thousands of protesters or climate change activists were out in the street. You had Michelle Fields from PJTV was at one of the rallies and caught up with RFK Jr. and made him look like a fool.
That was the best video. What an idiot!
It was a great video.
Wow, that guy is something.
And Leonardo DiCaprio.
And Leonardo DiCaprio.
What's her name again? Fields,
and the
right?
hypocrisy was just plain for all to see. Anyone with half a clue understood what was going on there. But what was really incredible to me was how RFK laid it out there and basically said, look, it's better if you vote for a Democrat than change your light bulb, which completely blows the whole thing out of the water and shows that it's not science that they're intending to
They say that. They admit that. I went to a climate change panel at Netroots, and that is exactly what they say. We went up there with the Franklin Center, and they literally say this is a way to get people to talk about social justice. That's what they intend. They mean it that way.
And that's what
they
mean by climate,
Aaron, you were there too.
Activism. They mean social justice. That's exactly what they mean.
All three of us were there.
Yeah, exactly.
You weren't invited.
And you know the thing, yeah, poor Joe. And the thing that ticks me off, after I didn't even know this event was going on. Caleb, can you imagine if you were done up in your garb that you were here in Detroit in Netroots, and maybe Aaron had not shaved for a week and looked like the young baby-faced fella that he is, and we had infiltrated that with some video. How much fun would have we had? Okay,
yeah,
and I'm not
I brought it up to a certain someone, but.
Michelle Fields and everybody all the video I saw, great job, really did. But
Michelle Fields rocked it.
She did.
She got him. The best part was she didn't try and push him off when he's grabbing the microphone. She just let him be an ass and do it all by himself. Just let him dig his own hole.
And exactly, and that's what you do. You set the table, you let the pig eat, and basically. I absolutely it ticked me off just from a selfish point of view, because I was like, what we could have done with that, just blending in and what have you. I just it blows my mind, because we would have had.
Well, I can't blend in anymore. I'm all neat and.
I'm about to blow your all's mind once again on this, because here's the kicker. They constantly claim that the science is settled. The science is on their side. They absolutely know the science. And even if they are a bit hypocritical in what they're doing, it's all for a better cause, because the science proves that they're right. Except it doesn't. The LA Times.
Aaron, what is this?
Oh, what is this? The LA Times this week actually ran an article, and I'm going to just read you the title and start from there. The title is West Coast warming linked to naturally occurring changes. Okay, now that's a rather docile title for what this is really saying. The better title for this is Wind Causes Warming, Not Humans. AGW Theory Debunked. That's how it should be written up, because I'm going to tell you what this is. This is from a research study done by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, okay? And the University of Washington.
Can you repeat that name?
What was that?
Can you repeat that name?
National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration.
One more time, a little faster.
National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, jerk.
That would be the group that tells Louisiana and the Carolinas that they could die at any second starting on June 1st.
Right, exactly. They're the guys who track the hurricanes and all the weather and everything like that. Now, they along with University of Washington, they published a report Monday in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. Okay, now what this says is that changing, here I'm going to read you the quote from this. Changing winds appear to explain a very large fraction of the warming from year to year, decade to decade, and the long term, said the study leader James Johnson, an independent climatologist who did most of the work when he was at the University of Washington. Now, what's amazing about this is this goes all the way back to 1900. It says that the changes in the ocean circulation have resulted in weaker winds and were the main cause about 1 degree of Fahrenheit of warming in the Pacific Northeast and nearby coastal lands from 1900 to 2012. So what that's basically saying, for those who don't know, is that all this global warming hysteria in the Pacific Northeast was basically bullcrap. None of the carbon emissions had any effect on it. What had effect on it was wind, wave currents, and all the stuff that Republicans and conservatives have said for a long time are part of the natural system of our Earth. And it's amazing to me that the same week that we have this sort of climate change, global activism, march in the streets in Canada and New York and all over the place, you have this debunking research done by a place that has the highest standards, has peer review, has every single thing that the left would ever claim is needed for something to be a valuable resource and be citable. We have it right here, and none of them
That's
have
not the
cited
first time. We had a perfectly legitimate story about a perfectly legitimate study. This was at RedState. That was a peer-reviewed scientific survey, some 17 years in the making, of how the stations that monitor ground temperature have been greatly affected to the point of being useless because of nearby cities and various outside factors that are not related to a change in the climate. And those are the ground stations that they're using to calculate the temperature on the surface in the first place. So even the data that they're using is unreliable, much less what they do with it. Even the source of the data.
Right, and you know this once again goes to the narrative that this whole climate science thing, this whole climate change, climate change, global warming, whatever they want to call it, it's a cult activity. It's not science, and this is even seen in the affairs that we've seen in the last week with the Neil deGrasse Tyson stuff. Sean Davis over at the Federalist, another great publication. He has been tearing apart Neil deGrasse Tyson for the last 2 weeks, basically, over all these fabricated quotes that deGrasse Tyson is using and all these speeches that he does. And not only does deGrasse Tyson refuse to admit the errors that he's made with these quotes and the fabrications that he's made, now that it's become known that he actually did err, those of his defenders are saying, oh, well, even though he totally screwed these things up and totally basically lied about these quotes, what he says about science is totally true, and we have to totally believe him, and he's totally for real, and you can't question him. They're actually Wikipedia editors going on and they deleted the Federalist Wikipedia page because of the questions that Sean Davis was asking about Neil deGrasse Tyson. It's
by the way,
scary.
That's the best birthday present the Federalists could have asked for, was for Wikipedia to try to delete their page.
Good point.
You know, that kind of stuff, that's such an activist website, it's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember, Aaron, when I got Don Fowler?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. That was a big news story. Not only was it everywhere online, but it was all over cable news. It was on talk radio. He issued an apology. He's the former chair of the Democratic National Committee, and that entry in his Wikipedia page about that incident was repeatedly deleted for not being noteworthy. And I kept undeleting it, and do you know what they did? They got rid of his entire page. Rather than have a mark on his precious Democrat record, they got rid of his entire page, and a month later put it back up clean and pristine.
This is the one on the airplane, right?
Yes.
With the hurricane. Yep. Go ahead and refresh our audience on that one. They may not know this. This is a long time ago this happened, but go ahead.
I was coming back from the DNC out in Denver, Colorado, where Barack Obama was coronated.
Aaron Gardner voted for him too, I heard.
Yes.
No.
And I was on the plane right behind Don Fowler, who was formerly of the DNC, and at the time was a major party member in the South Carolina Democratic Party. We were heading back to Charlotte, and he was putting on a show. You know how these people that think they're important act, talking real loud, making sure other people hear them dropping names. That's what he was doing. He was doing his little performance and making sure everybody on the plane could hear. And I didn't know who it was. I just knew, okay, this guy's running his mouth. So I turned on my video camera, and he starts trashing Sarah Palin. She had just been announced that morning. And part of the tape that I could not get the audio cleaned up, part of the tape was him saying they only like her, because she has lady parts. Okay, that was The first thing. But the second thing that he said was that there was a hurricane bearing down on New Orleans that was set to make landfall in New Orleans on the first day of the Republican meeting up in where the hell was that?
Minnesota.
Minnesota, that's right, Minnesota. And he said, just shows God's on our side. Okay, and he laughed about it. Ha ha! New Orleans is going to be hit by a hurricane, and he thought this is great news because it's going to make Republicans look bad. And so I put that video out online. We posted it at RedState. Went everywhere. I went on the Glenn Beck show to talk about it. It went all over the news, and he had to issue a statement in which he called me a right-wing nutbag, and basically definitely noteworthy, right? That's the kind of stuff that goes in Wikipedia all the time.
Absolutely.
Pulled it, deleted over and over.
Well, and that just proves the point once again. They're not about honesty. They're not about fact. They're a cult. They're a cult that has made man God and has chosen to worship the creation rather than the creator. Eric Erickson has written quite a bit about this sort of stuff. They actually, during this climate march, they actually did have one point where people were bowing down to a Mayan god in the middle of the streets, praying to end climate. And there was even an Episcopalian priest who gave a prayer at the beginning of the event, an invocation that basically praised the creation over and over and over again, and claimed that the earth had called them all together to seek justice and to be the earth's prayer to God.
The earth called?
The earth did. The earth, the living being earth, called them. You know, they have a living constitution and a living human being earth, but God is dead, and babies aren't humans and can be aborted. That is your warped reality of the left right there.
This may be a bit controversial, but people like this priest and Robert Kennedy and other people, quote-unquote, in the know that they're being led, these people are evil. Now, the majority of the muckruckers that are just walking around with signs and marching because they had nothing better to do, they're just sheep. But these sons of bitches are evil because they know what they're saying is wrong. They know that the science is not on their side. And I think you really need to start maybe, shifting this a little bit and saying, people like Al Gore that's making tons of dough on this, hey, capitalism's a great thing, I'm all for it, but the way that he's doing this is evil. It is absolutely 100% evil. And stop it with your moral relativism in terms of this. You're wrong. You're acting in an evil manner, and you need to get your rear end kicked about this because it's absolutely wrong what you're doing. And leading these, Leonardo DiCaprio's great actor, fine, whatever. He makes movies and everything. This guy, unless you put a cue card up in front of him, he doesn't know up from down.
That was clear from his video. Yeah.
No idea.
Well,
Robert Kennedy was.
But just for the record, he is like one of my favorite actors.
Because you look like him. Robert Kennedy was infuriated with Michelle Fields because she had the audacity to call him out on his.
That's right. Because she had the gall to question him. They expect to be treated like royalty.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. In any left-wing faction...
and Neil deGrasse Tyson's the same way. How dare you question him? Sorry, go ahead.
Evil. That is evil. You know what? The debate is not over. You could basically say up, down. You need at least 100 to 150 years of data to basically say that. And guess what? They really didn't have a way to measure this 150 years ago, other than the mercury in the tube. So we need a ton of time. And don't tell me that we have to act right now, because when I was 6 years old in kindergarten, I was being told that one day I'd be living in a snowsuit 9 months out of the year up in Michigan because the ice age was coming.
That's right.
Stop it.
Right.
They taught my daughter 8 years ago, that Myrtle Beach would be underwater in 5 years. That was 8 years ago they told her that. Guess what? People still go there.
Hey,
they have a Planet Hollywood and everything.
Hey, for you people out there that don't believe in creationism, right? Okay, it's all Darwinism. Okay, in 2 million or 2 billion years ago, there were dinosaurs. Well, you know what? For reptiles to be able to walk on the Earth, it had to be a hell of a lot warmer when you're finding bones and everything 300 miles north of the UP in Michigan. It gets pretty damn cold up there.
Don't be logical.
The climate had to be a hell of a lot warmer at some point, and you know what else that meant? That the ice caps might not have been, I don't know, as big as they were, so there still must have been a hell of a lot of land around. Why don't you people stop it with the BS? Let's just call a truce, and you can kiss my rear end.
I'll tell you what.
I like it when you talk this way.
Let me tell you why real quick. Here's the deal. Left-wing factions. There's only two types of people in the left-wing faction: the corrupt huckster leader and the naive do-gooder. Okay, those are the two people who show up to a left-wing event. Okay, that's it. That's all they got. Deception and corruption is what rules the day. And with Leonardo DiCaprio, you have your naive do-gooder. And with RFK Jr., you have your corrupt huckster.
You're forgetting joiners.
Joiners?
Yeah, joiners. There's naive do-gooders and there's joiners. People that just want to join. They just want to be a part of it because that's what's cool.
That's just joining. That's the
you know, I lump them in typically with the naive do-gooders.
Okay, but they're the sheep.
I'll go with naive. I don't know that they want to do any good.
They well, no, they actually. I know people that are like this. I'd agree with Aaron on this, and they're just sheep. They just want to be sheep.
I just want to hear you talk about mercury tubes again, real low and soft.
You know what?
You made that sound so filthy.
Mercury tubes.
Well, hey,
stop! Stop it with this crap. I mean, honest, somebody should be following Robert Kennedy Jr. around the whole time and going, "How come Uncle Teddy was smarter than you and he was a drunk all the time? How did that happen? How? Somebody explain this to me."
Oh, that is great.
You know, Uncle Teddy fought.
Well, you know what? I don't have an explanation for it, but I think obviously the inbreeding within the Kennedy line has been bad for the overall intellect of the latest generations. So we'll leave it at that with that. But
real quick, what's up? Caleb, if we ever are in an event with Robert Kennedy Jr.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to say, okay, if climate change is real, I have a bridge to sell you in Chappaquiddick and see what he does.
Nice.
Okay, because I think he'll snap and start punching you, and I hope whoever is holding the video camera isn't laughing so hard that he's punching you.
I think you overestimate the Kennedys because I doubt he would even get it.
Oh, I doubt he would even get it either, but I think it would be awesome. In fact, I think you should actually tweet that out there, Joe, as our official ombudsman. Tweet that out from Leduc, please. Let everybody know. But on that note,
not Kennedy the younger, but Kennedy the drunker. He fought tooth and nail against a wind farm that was going to go up outside of his outside of his compound.
Yeah, outside of Hyannisport because it was going to ruin the view.
It was going to ruin the view.
Yeah.
By the way, speaking of energy and the hypocritical Kennedys, I just want to note with RFK right now, we're actually going to see lower gas prices coming up soon. We got more production in the U.S. than any time in the past, 20 years. We're less dependent on foreign oil thanks to oil shale and fracking. We're at our lowest dependency for foreign oil and Middle East oil in decades. So they can all suck it. And most of that is all being done on private land, not public land, so Obama shouldn't be taking credit.
Did you just tell people to fracking suck shale?
Yes. Yes, I did.
He did.
So, on that note, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up now. We're actually 5 minutes over on our hour-long show. I appreciate you all so much for coming and watching the show this week. You all take care. Caleb, where can everybody find you at?
On Twitter, at Caleb Howe, CalebHowe.
Joe, where can everybody find you?
At Josie_Esquire on Twitter and at RedState.com.
Leduc, you marvelous bastard, where can the people find you?
You can find me at IrishDuke2 on Twitter and Leduc at FTRradio.com. That was my official radio voice, Air Bear.
There you go. I am Aaron Gardner, and in the words of the departed
Mercury
James
tube.
Trafficant, beam me up.
Oh.